youth, tear apart the core of blasphemy. Follow your prophet, and on evil make a victory. Let our righteousness be a role model to our children, making new generations of believers decently upbringing, with parents as an example. As gems we shape them, fearing only Allah, devoting our lives for Him.
Bismillah, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Closing the Gap. I'm your host, Omar Dunlap. We have with us, as always, Sheikh Yusuf Estes. How are you?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Welcome to the show today, Sheikh.
Thank you so much, Omar.
Today, I think it's appropriate to discuss, we've discussed many important issues so far in the series. Mm-hmm. I was wondering if we could get your take on the gap between the youth and the adults.
Whoa, that's a sensitive one right away,
right.
Yes.
So
excellent. This subject is one that is discussed almost everywhere. You find it in the news, in the media, of course, on the internet. And this is in the streets. Everybody's talking about this subject from one perspective or the other.
Right. Everybody's got an opinion on that.
Yes, and it's really divided into, I would say, two main camps. Those who are the elders and those who are the youth.
And what is their situation these days?
As many of the topics we talked about, it appears to be a lot different these days than it was, let's say, in Roman times, ancient civilizations. But there are these similarities that just beg to be noticed. That I would say here is really not any different in some ways than it has been for years. And that is where the youth reach a certain point in their lives when suddenly they look around them and say, you know, I'm pretty smart, I'm pretty brilliant, look at me, I have this ability, I'm strong, I'm physically up to par here and mentally on top of everything. And I look around and I see these elders and they're all washed up, they're out of date, they need to be replaced. Right. Well, this saying could have been yesterday, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, or historic times when the youth are looking up at the elders and saying, well, come on, I'll show you what I got, you know.
Right.
So this is on the one side. Now, if we look to the other side, the elders who have already been through this, all right, themselves, and have realized that there has to be a certain amount of homogeneousness between all of us to work together, to cooperate together, the give and take of life, more than just cooperation, but actually compromising, so that we look and say, okay, these guys don't know what it's all about yet. They just think they know. Just wait till they get down the line. They'll see. Right. They are the youth, and they got a long way to go. The youth are saying, look, these guys have gone too far. They're over the hill. So that pretty much would, I think, capsulize the topic.
I think you're right. So how would you say that the youth are viewing this situation, this sort of gap between, because they have, for example, their fathers or their grandfathers saying, you think you know it all, like you said, you think you know, but you don't know, and so how are they taking that? How are they viewing this situation?
One of the things that contributes largely to the problem today is the increased technology and the availability of education. Now, I'm not talking about knowledge, I'm just talking about education, to have information, but maybe in some cases with not a lot of real wisdom or knowledge to go along with this information that they have. You can go to the internet, as an example, to Google and type in words and get things to pop up. But that doesn't mean you really have knowledge, you just have information.
Right.
Just like you could go to a library and load up with a bunch of books. But until you actually read them, applied those, or had somebody help instruct you with it, you don't have anything except paper and ink. And in this same way today, we see the technology has reached a level that we've never even imagined in the past, where our youth are able to push buttons call up whole scenarios and scenes and have in front of them tremendous amounts of information. But again, not necessarily with any real wisdom. Because of this access to huge amounts of information and this access to technology that they're easily adapted to, because from youth we've had them pushing the little buttons on their toys to the extent that when they're out here today on the computers, 14, 15 years old, they're whiz kids, as we would call them, and the elders are going, I don't do computers. And the youth are looking at them like, you don't even know. Have you checked your email? What's a email? So because this has really caused the gap to widen, I think, in some ways, more so than ever before in history. Whereas the young are looking at the elders, not just in the terms of physical strength or some of the areas in financial status, but here they're looking at the actual knowledge itself and considering the information they have to actually be knowledge or wisdom.
Now, is there any way, because I'll tell you that when I was 18, 17, and my parents were telling me, you think you know everything, but you don't. I thought, well, we'll see, we'll see. And, that sort of knowledge or what the point they were trying to make didn't really sink in. But when I was 25, I was amazed at how right they were. Do you think there's any way to get the 17 or 18-year-old to actually to realize before having to go through it, or do they have to go through the experience?
It might be possible to do what you said, but I think it would be easier to get water to run uphill. I think that would be a lot easier challenge for me to deal with, is to get water to go against gravity than it would to get the youth to go against their natural inclination.
Right.
And it has been my contention for a very long time that all youth have to go through this. There's something inside of the psyche, there's something inside of the mental makeup of the youth that when they reach a certain point, maybe it's during puberty or right after or somewhere in there, but suddenly it's like, okay, I know everything there is to know about everything. You can't tell me anything, especially if you're an elder, especially if you're in a position of authority. I'm sure you're wrong.
Right.
Okay, that's the one side of it. But now let's look to the other side. You said how you felt when you became 25 years old. You look back and said, oh my goodness, I too went through something similar. That as I was growing up, I was even belligerent about this. When I was 16, I knew everything there was. I just knew, And I looked at them as being ancient people. I said, I don't even think I'm going to live to be 20. That's such an old age, And today, well, I'm more than 3 times that, But I look back now and I realize that there was a point when I looked at my father and I said, this guy doesn't know anything. But a few years later, when he and I were working together in our business, I looked at him and it's the same man doing the same thing, and I thought, this man is amazing. He knows everything.
Right.
And what was the difference? My perception. And the perception of the youth does change over time. So to be patient with them is one of the ways to deal with this, according to what we know from the psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors. They'll tell you that there has to be this identity crisis that comes into play, that they have to go through these stages. This is what they tell us. Now, after a while, when you get to the older age, you look back and think, well, maybe, I could have had a little room for improvement. But the older you get, and the more you deal with this subject, again, especially with the youth, and you reach my age, and you look back and you think, you know what? I can really understand now how brilliant my father was, and even his patience to let me even live with the way that I was.
Right.
But, this has been going on since time immemorial. This gap is one that is clearly out there, that's going to always be there. We talked about men, boys, but what about women and girls? What about what a girl goes through and when she reaches that age of rebellion, that age of suddenly knowing everything or feeling? Women are largely discussing their feelings, whereas men largely discuss their thoughts. What do you think about that? We hear this from men. I think, you think, we think. But from the ladies' side, we often hear this discussion of feelings coming from these same situations from the heart. and saying, well, I feel like this and she feels like that, and how do you feel about it? And this is not exactly on the topic, but just to understand that the women also have their things that they're going through. And we discussed in one of our other programs about the equity versus equality that we realize from Islam, solving problems. And this is another area too, I think it's worth to at least mention, that there is a difference, at least in the way that it's approached, in solving this problem, or this gap between the ages. And the women will be frustrated when they look to their daughters and say, girls, what's the matter with you? And the daughters are looking to the mothers and saying, you are an antique, lady, you know? So, on the other hand, another observation is that I've seen many times it seems the males are much more demonstrative in their expressions toward the age difference than perhaps the ladies are. I don't think the girls really are overt about it as much, demonstrating as much, but I think it's there. I do really see it as being there, but it's more perhaps noticeable amongst the men who go out here and want, like in the old days, you want to get a horse and run around and show off his horse, and father's running around with a donkey, ha ha ha. And today, you know, the youth, he wants to be out here with his BMW or his Audi, or he's got his flashy car that he's driving, having a good time.
Right.
And the girls also, they have their things that they go through. So there is this gap between the age thing, without doubt. Nobody can argue that that's not a real situation. And in fact, we find that some of the leading counselors, psychiatrists, and those who speak on these topics, professors and so on, will give us what they consider to be the solution. Or in some cases, just how to deal with the problem. You're not going to solve the problem.
Right.
All of this, comes around as a discussion topic in many circles, regardless of, let us say, cultures or financial status or language, so on. No, we find that this is everywhere on the planet, whether they're living in China, or if they're living in South America, or if they're in Canada or the UK, it's still the same. Youth hit a point when they're going one way, and then it seems like the elders, they get to a point where they're going another way. And we didn't mention this, but for the elders, there's also a time when they reach this age where they start forgetting. Not all of them, but a large portion of our adults, they get to an age where they begin to forget things. And things are mixed in their memories, where they go back and they've got two things crossed together or three things blending, and forgetting is things that you and I would... just like I know your name is... it was right on the tip of my because so when you see this, how do you deal with it? Because now all of us will have it to some extent at some point in our life anyway. But when it becomes so regular that it becomes so noticeable, then we say, okay, this guy's over the hill. Okay, he doesn't have a memory anymore. This is another area that we look at and we say, okay, it's the difference here.
Well, we're up against a hard break right now. We're going to come back, inshallah, if God wills. We're going to talk about the Islamic perception on these things, the solution and so on, of course, because this is an Islamic show. So don't go away. It's just a short break, and we'll be right back.
Fearing only Allah, devoting our lives for Him.
The philosophy of Islamic law, a program for restoring belief and trust within Muslims' mind and heart, and for re-establishing a true concept about Islamic rules for others.
Fearing only Allah, devoting our lives for Him.
Bismillah, assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Closing the Gap. I'm your host, Omar Dunlap, and of course we have with us Sheikh Yusuf Estes. Sheikh, just before we went to the break, we promised our viewers that we would come back and give them the Islamic perception and solution to closing that gap between the youth and the elderly or the older members of our society. So
Yeah,
what
be
does...
careful how you say that.
Yeah, I'm on edge here.
I happen to belong to one of the two.
Well, yeah, it was real easy for me to say youth, but when I start saying elders, I start getting nervous. So what exactly does Islam have to say? What sort of solutions does it offer to kind of close that gap?
One of the things that we've discussed in our other programs is that it's important to really analyze and understand the problem before you try to come up with a solution. Because if you try to quickly apply some medicine to something, it could be the wrong medicine.
Right.
We need to diagnose and understand. And so for us as human beings to diagnose our own problems, we have a new problem that will come up every time. And that is that we cannot be objective about being human beings. Because we are human beings.
Right.
So we're very subjective about everything. So we will not be able to give a true balance out there on our own. We would need to have something from the Creator, something from the sustainer of the universe, something from the one who put it all together in the beginning. If there's a God, and we say there is, and if He's in control, we say that He is, and if He has answers, and we say that He does, then we now need to turn to Him and ask Him, do we even know what our problem is? And if that's the case, if we don't, show us what the problem is, but give us the answer, give us a solution. And so let us decide, first of all, what we're talking about. We're talking about an age gap here, but it's not just about age. Because if you just said it was only age, just wait a while. Everybody will be older.
Right.
The gap closes, because if a 16-year-old girl, let's take a very young girl, has a baby,
Right.
there's a 16-year gap.
Right.
Okay? But now, 10 years from now, the baby is 16, or the 10 years old, sorry, and the lady's 26. Okay, that gap began to close. So if we said 40 years from now, okay, the baby is 40, and the lady's 56, the gap is much smaller, and you can see that as they get older and older and older, this gap seems to close, doesn't it? All right. Now, what does Islam teach us? From the very beginning, Islam teaches us that everyone has rights. There's none on this planet except they have rights according to Islam. Regardless of their beliefs, they have rights. Regardless of their financial status, they have rights. Regardless of their educational background, they have rights. Regardless of their political affiliation, they have rights. Even an enemy has rights in Islam. Even a prisoner that's an enemy has rights in Islam. So how about children versus parents? Now, because they all have rights, there must be a priority, because not everybody could have all the same rights at the same time.
Right.
It wouldn't make sense.
Right.
So what happens, and we'll look to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him now, what happens when I want to know what's the priority, what's the level? The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, came with the Quran. Allah sent him this recitation. Quran means recitation. And he recited it to us. So we look in that recitation in chapter 31, called Surah Luqman. And we go to verse number 12, 13, 14, 15, and read there, and we see that Luqman is being presented as a very wise man, speaking to his son.
For our viewers, is Luqman somebody you can find in the Bible, or is that something specific to the Quran?
Actually, I never have known. I don't know that that's a particular person from a biblical reference. I've been told that he was a wise man. Some thought he might be a prophet, but others said no, it just appears to be a wise man.
Right, so this Luqman in the Quran, he's
a wise man.
He's a wise person, and in these verses, he's giving advice or
to his son,
to his children. Oh, very good.
His son. He's saying, "Oh, my son."
Right.
And a son is a walid. He's saying to my son, you say ibni, my, so he's saying to him that the first and foremost right is to Allah. You must always keep your worship pure for Him. Worship God alone. Don't worship what He created. Don't try to reach God through something that is something like a rock, a stick, a stone, a bone, a human being. Pray directly to Him. That was the first thing. He laid that out clearly. And we find that in the Old Testament and New Testament the same way. You worship God. You don't worship anything else. Next, we find that He's talking about immediately after that is obedience to your parents. Obedience to the parents, obeying them in anything and everything, except if they have you violate rule number 1.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So the first rule is worship God alone without partners. The second rule is obey your parents. Regardless of what your brain is telling you, what your heart is telling you, you obey your parents. And that's going to go well with you, with your Lord, because He's given this to you as a test. There will be times when you will think you know more than they do. But at the same time, obey them and honor them. Now also in the Quran, we find a passage talking to us about what to do when your parents become elders to the extent we spoke of, where they don't really remember things anymore. They're not able to take care of themselves anymore. What do I do then? Do I old folks home? Do I check them out to senior sunset residence? Or no, it's telling me I have to take care of my parents. Even if it's very difficult for me, I mustn't say, oof. I can't say, oh, come on, No. I have to give them this full respect. And there's an expression in Arabic, it said, lower the wing of mercy to them. And do not even say, ugh. This is very key to understand dealing from the elders and the youth. Now, what about outside of the family? What about just elders in general?
Right.
And the respect, again, is for the youth to give respect to the elders. Always.
Right.
Because whoever is not given this kind of respect will not be shown respect by Allah. This is clear in Islam.
Right.
But to come back again to the relationship of parents and the children, look at this. One day a man came to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and he said, I've carried my mother on my back. He walked all the way to the sanctuary, and then he did 7 circumambulations that they do as a custom in worship there at Mecca, around the Kaaba, carrying his mother on his back. He said, now, have I fulfilled her rights on me? So he acknowledged that she had rights.
Right.
Have I fulfilled her rights on me? Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, not even for one birth pain. Now, what does a woman go through when she gives birth? And I've asked that question before to my wife, because in delivery, she squeezed my hand so tight I felt like it was going to break.
Right.
I asked her about it later. She said, you'll never imagine the pain. I said, well, no, wait a minute. I've broken my arm. I've broken both thumbs. I've had my nose broken. I've suffered some pains and ribs broken. I had all the rib bones broken from the breastplate. So I've experienced pain. She said, you have no idea. Even if you took your bottom lip, take your bottom lip and pull it up over the top of your head, you will never experience the kind of pain that a woman goes through in one birth pain.
MashaAllah.
So how much has a woman gone through just to give birth, carrying the baby inside of her, carrying this load for those 9 months, delivering this baby in pain upon pain. And this is mentioned in Quran, the pain upon pain that she goes through. And then when the baby is born, because the baby caused so much pain, what's the logical thing to do? Throw that thing away. That caused me a lot. No, first thing she does is has so much love for it, so much mercy for it. This is described in Islam clearly. Right. Talking about this situation. So we know that what was being said is true, that there's a lot of respect due to this mother, a lot of honor due to this mother. So much so that another man asked the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he said, after Allah has rights on me, and the Prophet has rights to be followed, He said, after Allah and His Messenger, who has the most rights on me? The Prophet responded back to him, your mother. He said, and then who? Your mother, and then your mother, and then your mother, and then your father. Your mother, your mother, and then your father. Because at the time that this revelation is coming about, there was so much oppression on women. And a man was the big, high, distinguished character in the family. He was the sheikh of the tribe. That's what sheikh actually means, is leader, of a respected elder. That's what it really means. And so, how come all of a sudden, here in the desert where women were looked down upon, is she being elevated to such a high level that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, mentioned it 3 times before mentioning the man?
Right.
Your mother, and then your father. Because there is respect for both of them, but to emphasize again and again, what is this high status that the woman, the mother, holds in the house? So the children now are looking up to their parents and realizing something very important. And if we have a moment, I'd like to tell you a quick story.
Oh.
When I came into Islam, my father became old. He accepted Islam, but then he started going through that transition where they lose their memory. And we, alhamdulillah, were blessed to be able to take care of him until he passed away. Just before he passed away, in those last days, he was sitting in his rocking chair, rocking back and forth. He could hardly remember. He'd remember my name sometimes. He was always happy to see me. But he would be rocking in that chair. And one night as I was working at the computer, my daughters were in the kitchen arguing. It's your turn to do the dishes. No, it's not. It's your turn. No, it's not. It's your turn. I did them last night. Yes, you did them last night because 2 nights in a row you didn't do them. Yes, I did. No, you didn't. Yes, you did. And so I got up out of my chair. I went over to the kitchen and I started to open the door. And just as I did, I looked at my father and I realized my sisters and I had the same kind of argument. And my father was so patient with us. And I looked over at him and I was thinking, I'm going to do what he would do. He would just let it go, let him sort it out. I walked over to my father, I leaned down, I said, Dad, I love you. Now, we don't say that in our family. We're not famous for that, in the West. I said, Dad, I love you. He said, well, I love you too. And I kissed him on the forehead. And again, this is something we don't do. This is a tradition you find, especially amongst the Arabs, to lean down and kiss the head of the father on the forehead. And then I went back to my chair and I sat there. Well, the argument settled down in the kitchen, and after a bit, the door opened, and my daughter, my youngest daughter, walked out and walked straight over to me. She leaned down and smiled, and she said, Dad, I love you. Kissed me on the forehead. Now, they had no way of knowing that my father and I had just gone through the same thing, and she walked off to her room. I started crying. I realized that, oh my gosh, look at this. This is a sign from Allah. How? Because in our family we don't do this. After the other one was through doing the dishes, she came out, walked the same path straight over to me, and she leaned down the same way and kissed me on the forehead the same way.
MashaAllah.
And she said, Dad, I love you.
MashaAllah.
I love you. And even now when I think back about it, I remember how my dad was really showing this kind of honor and respect to his parents. Even he was not Muslim, it doesn't matter. This is a commandment for the Christians and Jews too. The honor and respect for the parents. And look how Allah made it so that in his old age, he was given that respect. And even today, my children will call me on the phone. One's on one side of the earth, one on the other side of the earth. They'll still call me up, and one will say, Dad, I love you. And within an hour or so, the phone will ring again. It'll be the other one. And she'll say, Dad, I love you.
MashaAllah.
So this is a teaching in Islam that how you treat your parents, Allah is going to give you children to treat you the same way. It's a beautiful teaching.
And that is the most beautiful solution that Islam has to offer in closing the gap that I've heard so far. All of Islam's solutions are very beautiful, but mashallah, that's very nice. Again, I wish we had 1 million shows just to dedicate to this one topic, but all we've got is this one, inshallah. So, but we'll be back next week, and same time, same channel, all that good stuff. So we'll see you then, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
O youth, tear upon the core of blasphemy. Follow your prophet, and on evil make a victory. Let our righteousness be a role model to our children, making new generations of believers decently upbringing, with parents as an example. As gems we shape them fearing only Allah, devoting our lives for Him.